There's somebody who just popped up into the live chat that knows a whole lot about what Greg Roman has now burst back onto the NFL scene and had some success with in Los Angeles. Of course, it's the Jim Harbaugh era. That began this offseason after a great tenure at Michigan, his alma mater. He hires Greg Roman. You got Jesse Minter in the building and a slew of other former Ravens that are now Chargers, and they're playing some good football, and that's why we want to bring in today's guest, which is ESPN Chargers reporter Chris Rim. He does have some Baltimore background in him as well, so looking forward to getting into that conversation and a whole lot more. Chris, welcome inside the vault. It's great to have you here with us, and as we always like to start with, what is the state of the 7-3 Los Angeles Chargers entering Monday Night Football?
Yeah, glad to be here, and the state is excitement. I think there's a lot of excitement for the Chargers that there hasn't been here, probably ever. This is a team that's kind of struggled for relevance in a crowded sports market with a lot of stars. There's, LeBron, there's Shohei Ohtani, there's Mike Trout, there's, and now you have Jim Harbaugh. So I think there's excitement, right? They have their own superstar and they're good.
Chris, nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us. Never met you before, but I appreciate you being here with us. I saw you wrote an article the other day about how Jim Harbaugh, in such a short period of time, has been able to just turn things around. Can you kind of take us into that article a little bit and how he's been able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, the players described Jim kind of as someone who, when he got here, he basically created, coaches demand things of players and they want players to do certain things, but Jim kind of created an environment where players want to do the things that he's demanding versus him asking them to do it, if that makes sense, right? Mm-hmm. And you can even see when you have press conferences, right, the guys are talking like Jim. It's kind of strange a little bit, right? Not strange, but I guess this is what it is, right? Like they're saying, I think Lad McConkey said the other day, we were at our best when our best was needed. And I was like, oh my God. That's and then, they'll say it was an enthusiasm unknown to mankind or something.
Who's got it better than us?
Yeah, who's got it better than us? It's like all the things, right? And I think it starts with that. Like guys are really believing in him and believing what he's saying. And when you win, it's easy to do that, right? But there's also this idea of like, he said in his first press conference, right? Like, don't let the powder blues fool you, right? Like this is a soft franchise, right? It's known for passing. It's not known for the AFC North kind of, or even the 49ers brand of ball that Jim Harbaugh is used to playing, right? And I think this team believes that they are tough. And it hasn't been a tough team historically, right? It's kind of been a team with really cool uniforms. So I think that's how he's changed it.
Chris, you can't talk about the Chargers, obviously, without their franchise quarterback, Justin Herbert. And it's been a tumultuous career for him, just in terms of the lack of stability and some of the dysfunction that he's had to kind of play through. And now Jim comes in, and obviously he has just spoke so glowingly of his QB1 any chance that he gets, making headlines this week referring to him as one of the best of all time. Of course, that made its way into the Ravens flock community as well, because it was kind of the next question was related to Lamar, and he kind of compared the two of them and whatnot, and clearly just building up his guy. But I guess the question is, one, what has led to this Justin Herbert rejuvenation in your mind, and how has Jim unlocked him thus far?
Yeah, man, it's Jim has told the line of affection and obsession with Justin. It's I want to trade jeans with Justin. It's I'm trying to think what Beast Herbert. I want to be best friends with Justin. If you don't like Justin, something's wrong with you. And it's pretty funny because Justin is the complete opposite of that. Like Justin does not want the last thing he wants is attention on him. Like it's literally what he hates. He talked about it on Wednesday. He said, it started because in the offseason, Jim Harbaugh had the equipment staff create a gold jersey for Justin so that the defense understood that, okay, the guys wearing, because the quarterbacks would always wear a different color, but they wouldn't wear gold. And he basically said, the guys that are in the white jerseys, right, stay 2 yards away from them. But the guy in the gold jersey, make that 2.5, 3 yards. Justin hated that. He asked Jim if they could switch, and Jim said no. And ever since then, he's put Justin in these uncomfortable spots, right, to talk. They do wise words after practice. He'll make Justin speak. Or after the Tennessee Titans win, for example, Jim gave a speech, and then he says, before we say who's got it better than us, and then he pauses and he says, Justin, just speak to us. And then Justin's like, great job, guys. So it's a funny relationship, and I think in terms of a personality perspective, I think Justin's always been the same guy. People kind of describe him as like a shy and nervous person. I think he just has been coming into his own, right? And Jim is giving him, playful nudges, almost like a uncle or something, a loving uncle would, to make you become more of yourself, right? And on the field, you're seeing that, right? Like, this is first 4 games of the season, Justin had career lows in passing yards, completions, attempts, and he had a high ankle sprain. So I think there was some concern of, who is this, the new version, or what has happened to Justin Herbert? But since the bye week, he's been playing some of the best football of his career, and he's running a lot more. He's playing with like a confidence and a swagger that, I haven't seen since I've been here. Like, it's, against the Titans, he ran for first down and he got hit pretty hard. And the guys ran to, the offensive line and concerned, because he's at the bottom of this carnage. And when the pile cleared up, Justin was at the bottom of the pile with his arm pointed for a first down. So it's like, I think he's feeling himself this year. I think it's definitely a resurgence since the bye week, and it's the kind of player that made Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz take the job.
Okay, we got to talk about Greg Roman. We were talking about him right before you came on, talking about Lamar's kind of awkward pause when he was asked about Greg Roman. I'm super curious as to how he's fitting in. Obviously phenomenal run game coordinator. But I was curious how he would fit in with Justin. I'm sure Jim has his influence, but how is Greg doing so far? And do you feel like he's I guess just doing a good job? How's he fitting in?
Yeah, I think Greg so far I think Greg's been doing a good job. I mean, I think the first few weeks of the season, right? Like from week 2 to week 6, I believe, the Chargers hadn't scored a touchdown in the second half. And it was the longest stretch since the 2022 Ravens, where Greg was the offensive coordinator, right? So I think the Chargers, I think Greg has, when he came, I'll start it this way. When he came here, right, like Greg has said, imagine Justin Herbert with a rushing offense, and we're going to run the ball, and we're going to beat teams down, and this, that, and the third. And I think fans are really concerned about what that meant for Justin and what that meant for the offense. But obviously they hired a guy like Mark Trestman to help, this passing game. And you've really seen that this season, right? Like, since Justin's come back from injury, they've passed so much, like almost to their detriment at times. Like, I'm not sure if you watched that Cincinnati Bengals game. In the second half, they go 3 and out, fumble, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, because they're passing and the defense is on the field. So I think that it's been a different Greg Roman that I think Ravens fans are probably surprised to see in terms of how much they're throwing the ball. I think their second half issues are a real concern. Even that Bengals game, like I said, I think they scored 10 points in the second half, and that touchdown came late from J.K. Dobbins. Like, their second half offense has been a real issue. When they have a big, they in most of their wins, they get up big, and then the team inches back closely as the second half goes on, because the offense essentially can't put the game away. So I would say he's done a good job, and surprising. He's been a surprise in terms of how he's called this offense and how much they've passed. But the second half has been concerning.
Chris, Kyle Hamilton spoke yesterday, Ravens safety, on what it's going to be like to go up against, of course, the Gus Bus and JK, two guys that he knows very well. And he said, I think before the game, you think about it maybe once or twice, but while you're playing, it's just nameless, faceless opponents. I'll ask you this. I think everybody's wondering, because a lot of highlights have certainly suggested that J.K. Dobbins has got that step back. Like, there's no hitch in his giddy up as there once was last year, especially when he came back from the scope a couple years ago. He's obviously been banged up in recent years. What is this run game looking like? And how do you think Dobbins has recovered fully from that knee injury?
Yeah, I think JK looks probably like how many Ravens fans expect him to look when he's healthy, right? It just, unfortunately, he was, struggled to be healthy in Baltimore, right? I don't know if anyone ever had questions about if JK was good, right? It's just it was hard for him to stay on the field. And I think another thing that plays into JK is like, I don't know if he ever really wanted to leave Baltimore, right? I think he had a fun time there. I think he enjoyed the city. I think he enjoyed the culture of the team. And, coming to LA, he talked about, having something to prove and wanting to prove that he wasn't damaged goods at this point in his career, right? JK is like 25, but it feels like he's like 30, because of how, how much often he's been hurt and all that. But you look at the games, right? And JK is going to find the hole if the hole is there, or even if it takes a second for it to get there, he'll bounce it back. He's been one of the league's best backs, as he always is when he's healthy, right? And I think where Gus has come along, Gus spent a couple weeks on injured reserve with an ankle injury. But in the Cincinnati game against Cincinnati Bengals, Gus was the Chargers' best back in the first half before, JK ended the game on that run, right? But they're that perfect mix of, power and elusiveness, right? Like, I think in the fourth quarter of these games, the Chargers are built to wear teams down. That's kind of why their second halves have been surprising, that they haven't been able to put teams away like you would expect. Like, as you guys have watched Gus, right? Like, and now watching Derrick Henry, right? Like, no one wants to tackle a guy like that in the fourth quarter, like it's not fun to tackle like a tight end at running back, like just barreling down, the A gap or so I think JK and Gus definitely have been motivated this season, and want to prove that they are still, those guys. And I think JK has definitely done that.
Chris, can you kind of give me a vibe? So there's 16 former Ravens in the Chargers franchise right now, between the front office, the coaching staff, and the players. Do you get a feeling like, are they just trying to keep it I'm sure they're trying to keep it professional, and it's like this is like any other game. But do you get the feeling that there's like a underneath kind of feeling? Obviously, Jim wants to beat his older brother. He's 0-2 against his brother in the head-to-head coaching. You've got Ortiz. I mean, you've just got, obviously, we're talking about Dobbins. Do you feel like there's a little something extra this week going on inside that building to want to beat almost like a big brother Ravens?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And the coaches are going to lie at the podium, right? Like, they don't, and they're going to, for good reason, for their perspective, right? Like, they don't want to give anyone bulletin board material. They don't want to give anyone an advantage. So, Jim's not going to say, at his press conference, he kind of said, the players and push towards that. Right. But no, we know what this is. And I think everyone knows, and the players do a lesser job hiding it than the coaches, right? Like, they talk about it. Justin talked about wanting to win for Jim. And I think the Ravens beat Jim in the preseason too, when he was at the 49ers. So I think he's 0-3 against John. And I bet you he doesn't forget that either.
Yeah.
So I this is definitely a game, because, now some of the Ravens that are here are people who, left for positions, right? Like Joe Ortiz or, a Chad Alexander, right? Like, these are people who, they weren't pushed out of the organization by any stretch of the imagination. But there are some people who were castaways, right? So I think those people, like a J.K. Dobbins, even like a Hayden Hurst, and players like that, definitely want to prove that maybe, that you miss me, right? Like, or do you miss me, or, so
you should miss me.
Yeah, you should miss me. So there's definitely motivation, because for that fact too, but also the fact, like, just from a pure football perspective, right? Like, if the Chargers win this game, I think they go from a team that people don't expect much of if they make the playoffs to a team that people expect possibly to win a playoff game, because this is a Ravens team that people expect to contend for a title, right? And if you beat them in front of, we know the kind of sway that primetime games have on the national conversation. So not only is it a big game because of how motivated, the 16 people in the organization are, as you said, Sarah, but it's also big implications for where this team can go this year.
Chris, it's a little bit early. Obviously, we're live on a Friday, which is technically a Thursday in the Monday Night Football week calendar. It's a little bit early to look at the injury report, but because it's so deep and there are a couple significant names on here, we'd love to get your feel for how you think this is going to shake out entering the weekend. I mean, you got names like Khalil Mack who are on here as a limited designation Thursday. You got Ladd McConkey who popped up as a DNP. Their stud rookie wide receiver that you mentioned earlier on. Perryman at linebacker was a DNP. Cam Hart, who Kyle Hamilton has some Notre Dame blood with, has been playing some good corner for LA, was a DNP. So and that's just to name a few on the list. Anything notable that you think is on here based on past weeks and concerns that you have just in terms of availability going into Monday night?
Yeah. I mean, I think obviously the biggest concern on this list is Ladd and Khalil Mack. Ladd injured his shoulder against the Bengals. He played through it, and we haven't gotten any indication that is an injury that'll keep him out Monday, right? But again, like I said, Jim Harbaugh would not give us that indication until he absolutely has to give us that indication, right? So he's not going to tell us if it's bad or anything of that sort. Khalil, he's dealing with groin strains to both groins. He said in the Cleveland Browns game, it's a very painful injury. One he hasn't felt in his career. He said, but I will say this is an estimated injury report, but Khalil has been a DNP for essentially the last 2 weeks. So him being limited is a good sign for his status for Monday. And Denzel Perryman has also been dealing with injuries for a while. So he's missed practices but hasn't missed a game. So I don't think there's concern there. But the biggest concern would be Ladd. Like if Ladd doesn't play, that would be a big hurt because he's emerged as, Justin's top target. And I think that the Chargers' best receiver.
All right, Chris, we'll get you out of here on this. What matchup are you most watching on Monday night? Monday night. And do you have a score prediction of and who's going to win? Okay,
the matchup I'm watching most on Monday night is I think I really would like to see I guess Jesse Minter versus Todd Monken, right? If that is a matchup, the Ravens offense versus the Chargers defense. I think last week against the Bengals was a test. This is another test, a better offense. Perhaps the league's best offense against a defense that I think a lot of people have questions about because of the talent that they've played. So this will be. I'm looking to see what Jesse Minter schemes up, how he looks to stop that Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson monster that is the Ravens. And then my prediction, I think I'll say Ravens 23-19.
Okay.
Going low scoring.
Well, defensive game here.
Yeah,
okay.
That might be a scoregami. Hopefully not. I don't know.
I tell you what, too, and I hope I can. You mind if I sneak one more in as well? Or are you up against the clock, Chris?
Okay. Yeah, you're good.
I felt like it was heavily focused on the ties, which obviously need to be discussed. The offense, the quarterback, the head coach. But this is a stingy defense, and you see the rankings right here through 11 weeks. I mean, they're top 10 or around it in just about every single category the Chargers are. So, Sarah and I took a close look through Warren Sharp's analysis earlier in the week in terms of just how zone heavy they are in Jesse Minter's approach. But I got to wonder, will they deviate away from what's become sort of their calling card? Because Lamar's going to pick that thing apart. And then I think as well with they also play a ton of too high safety. But you better believe that this game's going to be one in the trenches in terms of both these teams are going to run. I mean, they're going to try to rush for 200 yards plus on each one of these guys. It's going to be so much fun, the time of possession. Who is going to win the time of possession battle? And I just got to wonder how you think this Chargers defense matches up.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to see it, man, because we haven't seen the Chargers' worst. Their most frustrated defensive game this season was against the Arizona Cardinals, and that was James Conner. James Conner ran all over them. He broke. They missed a bunch of tackles. He kind of had his way, right? And James Conner is a similar style back to Derrick Henry, right? I think people would probably say Derrick Henry is, probably a better version of James Conner, right? They've done well against other, top backs. Alvin Kamara didn't get off, or Nick Chubb's come back from injury, but he didn't get off. But I think, I'm eager to see if they fix those tackling issues, if they can wrap up the kind of powerful, big, strong, and elusive back that Derrick Henry is. But the Chargers have really found success in like stopping the run this season with light boxes because of Poona Ford, right? Like they signed Poona Ford in the offseason. Their defensive tackle, a guy who has been playing the best ball of his career, right? And he's really been able to stop the run. He's also been fifth in pass rush win rate. So like you said, they've been able to have freedom defensively on the backside because of what they're doing up front, along with Khalil Mack and Tuli Tuipulotu and Joey Bosa and Bud Dupree. I think in the secondary they've had injuries. Asante Samuel Jr. is on injury reserve. Christian Fulton missed some time. So for a long span, Bobby, they were running 2 fifth-round rookies at starting corner, right? Cam Hart and Tarheeb Still. And the boat just kept chugging along. So I think I'm eager to see what they do. Christian Fulton will be back, like you said. But yeah, I said on another show, like, I think that, and you guys probably know this stat, right? It's like if Derrick Henry, what is it? If he gets less than 15 carries, they lose or something like that.
Yeah, it's something close to 15. Yeah, there's definitely it's around 15 where and that's that's when you said can they stop Derrick Henry, and it's like probably not, but Todd Monken can.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. So if they can, I was saying that if they can find a way to slow Derrick Henry down, which is nearly impossible, I think they have a shot, because after that you just gotta pray. Like I don't know if there's really a way to stop Lamar, unless he has a bad night. Like that's usually the way to stop him if he's just off that day. But I said, yeah, if you can find a way to slow Derrick Henry down and pray, I think they have a chance defensively. So we'll see. I'm excited to watch it. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate it too. And like Sarah said, Todd Monken can certainly limit Derrick Henry, but you want to know what can limit friggin' Lamar as well? Penalties, and they are dead last in both penalties committed and the yards that those penalties have negated. So should be really interesting coming up on Monday night. Chris, we kept you a little bit longer than anticipated. So thank you for your time. You can be followed on X or Twitter at ChrisRim1. That's KrisRhim. And please promote anything that you got coming up as well over the next few days leading into prime time.
Oh yeah, appreciate y'all, man. It's great to be on here. I always saw y'all when I was working in Baltimore briefly, so cool to be on here. And I have this week coming up, Jamison Hensley, who covers the Ravens for ESPN. He has a big Harbaugh brothers story that'll lead the ESPN site, and I'll have a story about Justin Herbert and how Jim Harbaugh has pushed him into being a more vocal leader this season. So that'll be on ESPN. Definitely check it out.
Awesome.
And refresh everybody. It was the Sun. You had a cup of coffee at the Sun?
The banner. I had a cup of coffee.
Excuse me.
Like a month and a half.
Okay. I got you. I was going to say, you know what? You and OU Fusey, man, you guys come in here, you do what you got to do, and you go off to the national side. We're proud of you. Congratulations, and enjoy this one coming up on Monday night, Chris.
Thank you, man. Appreciate y'all.
Thanks, Chris.
Chris Rim for the Chargers perspective of ESPN.
He was cool. I like Chris.
Super cool.
Yeah. Okay, so predictions. So I get where he's actually coming from with the low-scoring game, because remember, we've talked about this. The one time that an NFC opponent has beat the Lamar Jackson era Ravens is when Wink Martindale was over there. He knew Lamar because he'd been here. Jesse Minter on staff for a long time here in Baltimore, including while Lamar was here. So I think that will help. And they haven't had to deal with Lamar and Henry, but like we said, you gotta use Henry. So I think that's gonna hurt. Plus, they are number 1 in points per game on defense allowed.
Scoring, yeah, number
Yeah.
1 defensive scoring. Yep.
Right. So they've only allowed 14.5 points per game. And Bobby, we're heading into week 12. So that's not like, anomalies there.
Yeah.
So, but everywhere else, I feel like the Chargers, at least in their rankings, are kind of average. I feel like Chris said that, since they're bye, Justin's been playing better and all that. And I know it's going to be emotional. So I think it's going to be pretty close. I don't think this is going to be like put your feet up and feel comfortable kind of situation. Here we go. Here's why I'm going to have the Ravens edging out. I hope that the Ravens use the Chargers' emotions against them, which is what the Chiefs and Steelers have done against the Ravens. Like, become the bigger bully, but do it smartly. Now that's hard to do, knowing that the Ravens are number 1 in penalties, which is just terrible. Okay, but there's the big brother part of this. There's the Ravens need to bounce back in a big way part of this. And then there's the primetime element, okay, which is that Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh have just been phenomenal in primetime. Under John Harbaugh since 2008, the Ravens have the number 1 record in primetime. And then you can look at all these stats. Like, there's so many things that they're in the top 5 in terms of, whether it's scoring or opponents scoring, rushing, completion percentage, turnover margin, all of it. Like, Ravens just play well when the lights are bright and they're the only show for the nation to watch. I also feel like it's going to be interesting. It's hard to say who knowing each other, is it going to be like a leg up for? I think that's kind of going to be a wash, and it's going to come down to the players. Like, as much as we talk about Greg Roman and the brothers and all that kind of stuff, it's going to come down to execution. Like, you got to clean up the penalties. You got to clean up the turnovers that we saw last week. But Bobby, if the Pittsburgh Steelers, if what really stopped the Ravens against the Pittsburgh Steelers was these constant penalties, putting them behind the sticks, and turnovers, which you got to give the Steelers credit, but a big part of that was the Ravens shooting themselves in the foot. I feel like if the Ravens stop doing that, they can totally win this and be in control. Just if they will. So I'm still going to take the Ravens. I'm going 28. Usually they're in the 30s, right? I'm going to go 28 because it is a lot of Jesse Minter and former Ravens over there. To 24.
Okay. It's always one of those tough weeks when you have Monday Night Football out there and there's injuries involved on both teams, especially Khalil Mack on their side and McConkey, to Chris's point. And then most notable of them all is Roquan Smith from a Baltimore perspective. But hey, this is what we're doing. We're predicting on Friday. I'm going Ravens 31-24. I referenced the statistic earlier on in the week that in games coming off a loss throughout his career, Lamar is a staggering 17-4. There's that. There's the primetime element that you mentioned as well. But there's also what just happened last night that's in their minds. They understand that they can crawl within a half game of Pittsburgh. And this is where you start to kind of turn the crystal ball around and start to control things and put it in your own destiny down the stretch. You know how much of a gauntlet it is for Pittsburgh in terms of their AFC North divisional opponents and just the strength of schedule as it is down the stretch. And you know how much of a hole the Bengals have put themselves in as well through 11 weeks. So there's that element of it. And then there's some of what we discussed with Chris from a football perspective. And that is, can the Ravens get the Chargers out of their kind of comfort zone defensively, which is the too high safety look? That's the strategy that they've deployed. You can do so by dominating the trenches and controlling the time of possession through the run game. Both teams are going to attempt to do that. It's going to be a power struggle. It's going to be so much fun to watch. Does Dobbins really have that extra giddy up like so many feel? And can the King truly be utilized throughout a 4-quarter performance along with Lamar as his running mate? Aside from that, this Chargers defensive front, based on some of the film and the study and the research that I've done for this show, Sarah, they're going to deploy a ton of stunts, some twists, and I think Lamar is not going to have a whole lot of time to process and go through his reads. If that ends up being the case, I like the quick passing game, striking across the middle to Mark Andrews, getting Zay involved, right? Getting Zay involved in some bubble screens, getting Derrick Henry involved in the passing game as well, in the flat if it's there, check downs, taking those layups. And I think the Ravens find a way to win. Los Angeles time, of course, it's going to be a traveling across. That's always usually disadvantage to the road team. That's what the Ravens are going to try to go up and overcome. 31-24 coming up on Monday night.